All right, welcome back to the Are You Strong show. Another awesome guest on the show tonight. As usual, before I say her name, I'm going to kind of give you a nice little list of all her accolades. First, she got her bachelor's degree in psychology from Colorado State University, Pueblo, where she played indoor volleyball. And then she decides to go get a couple of master's degrees, not just one, but she got her first master's degree in kinesiology and exercise science, which is probably one of the hardest ones out there, from Louisiana State University, LSU. And she decides to go from the hardwood floor to the beach in beach volleyball. And while she was there, she said, let me pick up another master's degree in counseling education from LSU while playing more volleyball. So super smart, really cool. But again, beach volleyball player, indoor volleyball player. And then she decides to start a podcast, okay, which is really neat. She's the founder and the host of Hanging Up the Jersey podcast, which we're going to talk about. And then she has a workbook on the same topic, Hanging Up the Jersey workbook that she's the author of. And I want to get deep into that. And it's the practical guide for supporting athletes navigating, and I hate to say the word retirement, but the ending of their playing days. But welcome to the show, Caitlin Broadwell.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, Jeff.
I'm excited to have you on, and I've had a couple of people who are in your space on the
Hmm.
show, and I just love the psychological stuff,
Hmm.
and your perspective from an athlete to your professional position, the combination of the two is so perfect,
Hmm.
when we're talking to athletes. But before I ask you a ton of questions, just tell the audience just a little bit about yourself and we'll kind of roll from there.
Yeah. So, like Jeff mentioned, I'm Caitlin Broadwell. I am originally from Lawrence, Kansas. So, always a Jayhawk fan. KU basketball, was our life growing up. And then I went and played college volleyball, indoor and beach. Um, my goal since eighth grade was always to go into sports psychology. I was in a psychology class, and the professor teacher was talking about it. And I was like, that's what I want to be since I love sports. And I never really strayed from there. And right out of grad school, I got my position at Long Beach State, and I'm an athletics case manager, which means I connect all of our student athletes to mental health support. On top of that, on top of the podcast and the workbook, I also do private practice. So I work with high school or former athletes in the clinical private practice setting as a therapist. So um, I guess I was busy in grad school, and that just stays the same now in my professional world, but that's kind of what I'm up to now.
So that's got to be, I shouldn't say cool, but very interesting to work in the athletic space in the psychological side.
Hmm.
Because you know as well as I do, Caitlin, that's half of the game is in our head.
Absolutely.
Half the game is played out in our heads, and we win or lose the game before we even start the game in our heads sometimes,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? So before I get into all your current stuff, I want to go backwards in time with you.
Hmm.
I mean, you're a very young person. You might be saying, well, to you it might seem like forever ago, but it was not that long ago. You
Hmm.
were coming out of high school,
Yeah.
okay? And you were deciding, hey, I'm going to go to a college. I'm going to play volleyball. And I always like to start the show off with a question around recruiting
Mm.
because recruiting today is insane.
It's another world.
It's got there has to be some guardrails somewhere soon put on
Hmm.
this because
Hmm.
it's just getting out of control.
Yeah.
But talk about your recruiting process coming out of high school.
Hmm.
How was that psychologically for you as a young woman? You were what, 18,
Hmm.
and just I got to pick and choose the school I'm going to go to. How did you do it? Was anybody helpful with you, parents, family, friends, coaches?
Hmm.
And what kind of stress were you under? And then a second question, it's a long one, is well, how does that compare to today's kids coming out and
Mm.
getting recruited? Is there
Yeah.
any major difference?
Yes. Man, that part of my story is exactly why I wrote my workbook. So when I was 14 years old, I was a pretty advanced volleyball player, so I was already getting recruited, invited to camps. Um, but around that same time, I got diagnosed with Graves' disease, which is a thyroid condition. With that, I lost a lot of muscle mass, a lot of coordination. I was losing hair. I was just really struggling, and we didn't know what was going on.
Mm.
Um,
And you were 14.
I was 14 when I got
Ugh.
diagnosed, and it was a pretty severe case. And so I was out from athletics for probably like 4 or 5 months while we were trying to recover and heal. And so I had volleyball taken away from me at a very young age when I had really high hopes. Um, and luckily, this was my freshman year. So I was able to come back my sophomore year and we had things under control and I was getting recruited. And for me, that was really fun. I had an older sister that played volleyball. So as the younger sister, I think I kind of had a leg up because
Yeah.
my parents already went through that with her and like knew how to do it better for me
Okay.
because
Did
they
she play
learned.
in college too?
Yeah, she played at Fort Hays State in Kansas. Um, and we actually ended up playing each other my freshman year and her senior year.
Really?
Yeah, which
How
was
was
really
that?
fun. Oh, it was fun. My team won each time, but um but with that, I was getting recruited to a lot of mid-major to major D1s to play outside hitter for their teams. And around that time, junior year, I actually had a relapse. And we think it's because
Mm.
I was under a lot of stress because of the recruitment. And with the relapse, the medicine stopped working, and we had to change kind of plans. I had to stop playing volleyball because one of the symptoms of this disease is a high heart rate. And so
Right.
my resting heart rate was 130 usually.
So can I ask you a question around that?
Hmm.
Because for people who might be listening, right? Maybe they have the same problem and don't know it.
Hmm.
So what
Hmm.
what are the symptoms of that?
Hmm.
And is that an underactive, overactive?
Hmm. Hmm.
And
Yep.
what is the treatment for that?
Yeah, so it Graves' disease is hyperthyroidism. So my thyroid was over producing hormones. So it was going really, really fast. And so even though I was eating like the whole house, I was losing weight and I was losing muscle. I was really fatigued. Again, like I said, I lost coordination, I was losing hair. Um, and my parents, I was always like a thinner kid, so my parents just thought like, well, she's always been thin.
Yeah.
And it was a really rough time because they didn't understand why I started playing really bad. And I didn't understand, I didn't know what was going on either. Until one of my teammates' parents, who's a nurse, was like, you need to go get your kid checked out. Like something is not right. My parents are like, okay. My godmother was my softball coach in high school, and I was at tryouts and I couldn't make it around the bases when I was running. I like was about to pass out and I was like very, very white. And she called my mom and she was like, your child, I've never seen her this white. Like, you need to pick her up and take her to the like ER right now. Like,
Yeah.
she's not right. And that's when I got diagnosed, like in that case. And so, yeah, Graves' disease, I think a lot of women have thyroid issues. It's pretty common. It's pretty rare at that young of an age to get diagnosed and have that severe of a case. Um, but it's hereditary. So, like, we found out after I was diagnosed, my mother, grandmother, and aunt have a thyroid disorder because it's an autoimmune disorder. And so, yeah, it's really easy to get checked because it's just blood work. You just test the T3, T4, and TSH levels. And yeah, a lot of women have underactive or overactive thyroid issues and don't know it because the symptoms, if it's not severe, my case was super severe, but if it's not severe, you just feel tired and
Yeah.
a
Is it
lot.
more common in women than men?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
But men have it, and I've actually worked with student athletes who have, this disorder. And
Yeah.
a lot of times, in the mental health world, it actually gets misdiagnosed as depression because they're so fatigued and exhausted. A lot of their symptoms look like depression. And so, a lot of times in the clinical setting, if we hear these symptoms, we make sure like the client gets their lab work tested first before we can diagnose them with a mental health disorder.
Mm.
But I think that answered your question about the disease in itself.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Hmm.
it's it's scary, and knowing that runs in your family,
Hmm.
and then I'm going to guess that the next generation we got to worry about that,
Yeah. Yeah.
and going on. So you how did you come across University, or Colorado State
Hmm.
University,
Yeah.
Pueblo. Like, how did that become the choice?
Yeah. Well, honestly, I after I had relapsed during my junior year, it was during the nationals of club volleyball. So that's when all of the coaches that were recruiting me were expecting to watch me play. And I was just sitting on the bench. And it's an invisible disease, like it's not like a broken leg. So they're all
Yeah,
kind of like, what's going on? All of them, except for two schools, dropped interest. They didn't even
really.
ask. A lot of them ghosted me, and I was heartbroken. Like all of my dreams
Mm.
just like I watched go away because of this disease. And like we knew this disease I was going to be able to recover and like get myself back, but um we didn't know to what extent. And
Now, how
because
do you handle that rejection at 18 years old?
I don't think I knew what was going on. Like I think about a lot like so part of the treatment is I had to do radiation. So we decided to kill the thyroid through radiation. I went to a children's hospital. I was like around 17 and like I'm very tall. So they didn't give me enough radiation because they're used to treating children.
Yeah.
So that didn't work. And
Oh,
so we decided to do surgery. Surgery was risky because it's right by the vocal cords. And you can kind of see my scar right
yep.
here,
A little bit.
but
Yep.
they
If you didn't
removed
tell me, I
it.
would have never noticed.
Yeah, it's a very small scar. They've gotten really good at taking it out, but we decided to do surgery and I was back on the court within a week after surgery. And so my parents and I kind of were like, dang, we wish we would have done surgery because radiation was such a long process. I had to quarantine.
Was
I
it
had to be
painful?
It wasn't painful, no. It was
No.
nasty because I had to drink a lot of iodine and it tastes
Mm.
like quarters. But yeah, the surgery wasn't painful either. So there was a lot going on, right? I had the physical health issues and then the loss of all my volleyball options besides two. So I actually went to a school in Nebraska. It was a D2. So that was like kind of embarrassing for me because in my town of Lawrence, it's a small college town. Um, we had like people around there had high hopes that like I was gonna be able to go play at this big D1 school, make them
Yeah.
proud, whatnot. Um, and so every time people would ask, like, oh, where are you going? Where are you going? I would be so embarrassed to tell them Nebraska Kearney because they're like, where is that? Like, what school is that? And that was really, really hard for me because I had to um, tap into like my identity during that time. And I don't think I really tapped in because I held a lot of shame and embarrassment during that time, but it definitely woke me up to the fact that like at any point life and sport can be taken
Yeah.
away. So it was definitely like a time where it changed the way I viewed
Yep.
like life in a way.
Can we drill that down just a little bit?
Hmm.
Because if you look at the stats of high school athletes that go on to play any collegiate sport, it's less than 5%.
Hmm.
So here you are, a young woman, 18, ashamed that you're going to play college sports at a smaller school, whereas
Hmm.
how many girls or guys would die to be in those shoes?
Hmm.
Because
Hmm.
our for lack of better words, our egos don't
Yes.
allow us to settle,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
can you talk? Yeah, keep going on that. That's a great story.
Yeah, I mean, I think no matter at what level, like when you get into a certain level, like I think of it as categories, you forget that you like got to that high category. So when I was at in college playing volleyball, I was always just like frustrated because I'm like, I feel like I could do better. I feel like there's more because I see people that are in a category higher than me, right?
Yeah, yeah,
When I got to LSU, I'm playing with future Olympians
yeah,
and I had to completely oh my gosh, my ego had to be completely removed because I was like, I believed I was a horrible beach volleyball player because I'm playing up against the best defender and blockers in the world. But in my
yeah.
head, I should be up there too. And so it changes, right, with like the level of where you're playing. And I'm sure
Sure.
Olympians sometimes feel that way too, of like, I need to be better. I'm not playing good enough, even though they're
Yeah,
the top 0.001% of athletes. So it really is like you work your way up and you forget that there's categories below you that's like wanting to be where you are as well.
yeah. So you had to have some role models somewhere,
Hmm. Hmm.
and I forget, and just forgive my ignorance here. The two women in beach volleyball who like set the everything.
Hmm.
What were their
Hmm.
names again?
Misty May and
Yes.
maybe April Ross.
I remember Misty May,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
like they won everything all the
Yeah.
time, right?
Yeah.
So were they your role models? Were other people like who were you emulating? Who were
Hmm.
influential in your life growing up in that sport?
Yeah, I mean, definitely my sister from the
Okay.
get-go, from a very young age. My whole goal as the younger sibling was to be better and get better opportunities than her. So definitely my sister. And then when I was in high school, we go to a lot of KU volleyball games, and so a lot of KU volleyball players I really looked up to. I love Destiny Hooker from Texas. Texas is one of the best volleyball schools, most exciting volleyball schools to watch. And then, of course, like Misty May. But I didn't know beach volleyball would ever be an option for me, so I never looked at her game as like something to go after
Hmm.
up until I started playing beach volleyball, which Misty May is a Long Beach State alumni, which is really exciting. So I've
Oh, that's
gotten
cool.
to meet her and she's around. She's like always around practices and games. So it's really cool how small the volleyball world is.
And she lives right around there?
Yeah, she lives in Orange County.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's perfect.
Yeah.
Wow. So when did you get drawn to the mental side of sports? Did that was
Mm.
that something like, hey, you just woke up one day, this is cool, or how did you get attracted to that?
Man, I was obsessed with psychology in eighth grade. And I was like, I want to learn about people's minds. I want to know how people and why people do things. Like, I was just so curious about humans. And so I was like, I want to do something with psychology. I want to be a psychologist. And then I heard about sports psychology and I was like, oh my gosh, like I'd get to work in athletics. I'd get to stay in this culture and community that I grew up being a part of. Like, that's something I really enjoyed. And then when I got to LSU, they have an amazing sports psych director, Dr. Lakeitha Poole, who is now a mentor and long friend of mine. But she was my sports psychologist when I transitioned to beach because that transition was so difficult because like it's such similar sports but completely different. And so I really struggled learning the game of beach volleyball and she like completely helped me on the mental side, the mental performance piece. And after like really learning a lot under her, I was like, I have such a clear path on what it can look like. And she was like my person that I was just like, I want to be in her shoes. So I would say Dr. Poole was probably the person that inspired me most to get into the mental side of sports.
Cool. So what was the motivating factor to go from I'm just gonna say the hardwood floor
Hmm.
to the beach?
To play at LSU, honestly. I was done with indoor in the fall and I was living my best life, going to the mountains every weekend, traveling. I loved not being an athlete anymore. It was a really rough season my senior year. We won 3 games.
Oof.
I was so over it. And then I visited one of my friends at LSU who played beach volleyball there. And she introduced me to the coach and was just like, she's really athletic, um, kind of giving him all the stats. And he was like, let's talk about it. And he literally called me the next week. And I was like, almost shaking because I could not believe. I'm like, why is he calling me? And it was like, I want like a leader and like you're a senior, you got 1 year left, like let's make it happen. And I was actually about to move to Australia and become a nanny because I got rejected from all the grad schools I applied to. And so I was just like, shoot, like let me see if I can make this work. And that's why I ended up having 2 masters is because it was too late to apply to the Masters of Counseling program, where the kinesiology program was open applications or enrollment. And so I got into the kinesiology program and I walked on to the LSU team to play my last year. And as someone who had her dreams crushed at 16, 17, 18 years old, with like losing all the opportunities of a D1 school, um, I was eating up every single second of being an athlete at LSU. Like the privileges that we got, the
Let's talk about that because I know the first time we spoke, we talked about the different, just the facilities in the world
yes.
and what they provide. Like
Mm-hmm.
the average person doesn't understand like what does that
Mm-mm.
really mean to an athlete at that
Mm-hmm.
level. Can you kind of go down that road a little bit?
Yeah, I mean like I love like thinking about one at LSU we had like our own athletic trainer with a student trainer. And so we had two people that were like really looking after us. At CSU Pueblo we never had a trainer call like travel with us, and like they were split between three sports. And so it was like limited support really because there's only one person with like very very large number of like athletes.
Yeah.
And then any resource you could think of, like I had really bad back spasms. We got all the top treatment from all the top doctors. Masseuse would come in, once a week for the team. We had unlimited food. We had our own food center for the athletes. So the nutrition center is connected to the football, like operations,
Yeah.
like indoors, like stadium, I
Just
guess.
walk in
And
and pick up food and leave whenever
walk
you want.
in, it was a private chef, and like that's just like as someone who had seen everything and like
You're like a
the
celebrity.
I felt like a celebrity, and like because I had the backpack and the gear, I felt
Yeah.
like I belonged with like the people that go to LSU are NFL players, Olympians,
Yeah.
Heisman Trophy
The best of the
winners,
best.
the best of the best. And so, I always felt like I didn't belong, but I just like kind of just like I'm here. I'm gonna be like the emotional support person on the team. But yeah, like the amount of gear I got at LSU compared to the 4 years of indoor volleyball was the same in the 1 year that I played at
Yeah.
LSU. And I mean, I still have too much gear of
It's all about
LSU
the
gear.
gear.
It's all about the gear, yeah. All the shoes and yeah, it was insane. And um it actually like I think like also fed my ego, even though I wasn't playing, people that I knew or like knew about me or like just like peers were way more excited about me being at LSU. They like kind of valued what I felt like my worth to them a little bit higher than when I was playing D2. And so that also made it hard because I felt like I was getting a lot more attention from people just because I was an LSU athlete. When I didn't really I didn't score any points for LSU, but I was like in the school records at CSU Pueblo. So that was also a little like confusing and mind-boggling to me to try to grasp like what that meant.
Yeah.
And that also made my transition when I finished up at LSU like 10 times harder because I'm like wanting to hold on to that identity and like feel like I still belong with like these amazing athletes who are
Yeah.
just like me, like regular cool
Yeah.
humans.
Yeah.
But it's interesting how much worth we put into these athletes who are just regular people with exceptional skills.
Yeah. Well, talk about the identity piece because that's
Hmm.
where I think, Caitlin, the I always keep saying the average person, right? But
Hmm.
how about the less educated person on a college
Hmm.
athlete's scenario?
Hmm.
Talk about it's like to be at that elite level, the identity that you have, and then it's gone.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
over. You're no longer no one's ever how's the game? How you doing?
Hmm. Hmm.
It's like it's almost like I have nothing to talk to you about.
Right.
And that affects the athlete's mindset. Like it's like nobody cares about me anymore.
Hmm.
And that
Hmm.
really hurts. So
Yeah.
can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, to talk about that, we need to start when we first put these kids into sports, because that's when their identity around them being an athlete starts. When they get really good in middle school, high school, that's what they're known for. So it starts at a very young age, because of the time commitment, because of everything they have to sacrifice in order to be an athlete. That just strengthens their identity, right? Because it's
Yeah.
like I'm spending all my time putting all my eggs in one basket. So that identity is super, super strong. It gets even stronger the higher the levels go. Because then that's all people know these individuals as. And you're right, like they sometimes feel like when they transition out, like their worth decreases because people are less interested. There's
Yeah.
also way less support. Like as an athlete, you have advisors, trainers, coaches, student development, like all these people that are invested in your life. And then poof, you're gone. You don't have your teammates that you see every day.
Yeah.
And so you're sit wondering, like what what am I? Who am I now that like
Yeah.
I don't have all of this? There's so much more to these student athletes, but they don't
Yeah.
have time to invest to explore
Yeah.
these different identities because all of
Yeah.
it is going towards sport.
And you know what I heard from a couple of people? One of the most painful things they got to deal with is when their swipe card doesn't let them into the facility anymore.
Yeah.
And they're like, I'm locked out.
Yeah.
Where it's just the day before they had
hmm
access to everything.
hmm
Like, how do these kids handle that?
Yeah, I mean, it's different depending on the student athletes. I think in my opinion, just working with student athletes, our male athletes struggle with this a lot more than our female athletes because a lot of times our female athletes don't have a lot of opportunity to have professional
Hmm.
um, like leagues to go to, really, unless they go overseas. And so they're already knowing that their career is going to end at college, where
Hmm.
most majority of male athletes are kind of expecting that they'll go pro
They all
after.
think they're going pro.
Yeah, yeah. And so they're less likely to think that there's an ending to this. And then yeah, they swipe their card and they're not let in. They don't get the opportunities that they're hoping for. And they got a degree in, like communications or something that if they're not working like for a specialty can sometimes be very difficult.
Yeah.
Um, and so they're coming to college for the sport, thinking that sport's going to get them to the next level. And sometimes that doesn't work. And sometimes it does work, and they're still in this position just 3 to 10 years later, you
Yeah.
know? But yeah, it's such a shift, and we're talking about it now. The NCAA has put in, recommendations for schools to be talking about this with their student athletes. And so I think that's really good, just like that we're having conversations about it because
Yeah.
when I was a student athlete, no one told me anything. They just said
Yeah.
bye and that was
And that
it.
wasn't that long ago.
It wasn't that long ago,
It's not like
no.
a, hey, 40 years ago type of thing.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and when you think about how much it's grown to
hmm
be okay in the
hmm
last 5, 6, 7, 10 years,
Yeah.
um, it's remarkable,
hmm
right?
hmm
So how about on your own side, if you don't mind, I'm going to ask a question. If you don't want to answer, it's okay. Uh, when you were playing, you transitioned from D2 to massive D1.
hmm
The athletic change has got to be ridiculous,
hmm
right? The competition is fierce. But how about from the mental side for you? Any struggles with that? And then were there any physical issues you had to deal with? You already said the thyroid when you were a
hmm
kid.
hmm
Any other injuries that just compounded things? And talk about that stress that you may have been under.
Yeah, I mean the difference between indoor and beach volleyball. So indoor there's 6 players, you're on hardwood. Um, Beach volleyball there's only 2 players. And it works kind of like tennis where you have like one, two, three, four, 5 teams that are playing against other 5 teams. And so I had to adjust for me indoor, I was the type of player where I was like hit ball hard. Like I didn't really think about what was happening. I just kind of had an instinct that got me really far. Where beach volleyball is so strategic because there's only 2 players and hitting the ball hard sometimes works, but probably 70% of the time you're actually like making really strategic shots because there's only 2 players.
Yep.
And so that was such a hard adjustment because I felt like not only ha did I have to learn this whole new game and strategy, but even like the technical skills of like bumping a ball was different than indoor. Indoor, it's very much about you're passing directly to a setter, where in beach volleyball, you kind of just pass in front of you because you have another player coming to, get your ball. And so you're changing just how you shape your body around the ball. And so I had to change like the way I moved in volleyball. So that was like really difficult. But I was competing with, I told you earlier, like my 2 teammates that year are now Olympians. They were in Paris back in 2024. And I had such a hard time because I had this high expectation where I was an impact player at CSU Pueblo. I was the one that they depended on the court to now switching to being a leader on the team, but more so like a character leader because I couldn't lead physically because I'm competing with the top people in the world. But my mind couldn't. My competitive spirit and mind and
Yep.
pride didn't really let me settle with the fact that I'm playing with the top people and this is my first year ever playing beach volleyball. Like I was like, I play volleyball, I'm competitive, I should be up there too.
Yep.
And so it was a lot of struggling with feeling like I belonged on the team,
Yep.
struggling with my worth because I put it in volleyball yet again,
Right.
and just trying to figure out how can I make the best of this situation for myself and my teammates and still feel like I made an impact. And like during the national championship, I was like carrying around like a big LSU flag because I wasn't playing, but like the rest of us were there to hype our teammates up.
Yeah.
And like Holly Rowe did like a little segment on like what she called the energy flag because every time the flag would show up on the court, the like energy would change and we'd end up winning that match. And so I felt like that was something I was like really proud of because I was like
Yeah.
I couldn't like I wanted a segment where I was the top player on the team, but I was still making a difference even though it didn't look like how I was expecting.
Yeah.
And that's all I could like I felt like I did the best with what I could do at that time. And so I felt like it ended on a really good note. We did the best LSU's ever done that year. We got third at nationals. And so it was really exciting to feel like even though I physically didn't make a difference on the team, I still had an impact mentally and,
Yeah.
energetically.
Can you talk about and I'm going to ask you this question because I think again the audience who's not involved with collegiate level
Hmm.
college sports, especially at your level, they don't understand. They might be saying, how hard can it be to play beach volleyball? How much better are these girls? Can you talk about the difference in the
Hmm.
athletic ability of some of these girls you played with? Like you said, they're Olympians. Like,
Hmm. Hmm.
what is the difference that makes them so good?
I mean, I think part of it was when I was at LSU, I was one of the shorter ones on the team, and I'm 5'10". And
Which is
so,
tall.
which is very tall for a female.
Yeah.
In the real world, I'm always towering over people.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of them is like they're built just a lot taller and a lot stronger. But a lot of times these girls have been playing beach volleyball since they were age like, 6, 7, like very young and start training very young. But other than that, I think like beach volleyball, you have to be jumping and moving very quickly in sand, which doesn't really help you move quickly or jump higher. If you've ever jumped or ran in the
It's hard.
sand, yeah, it's like pulling you down.
Yeah.
And so the physicality is really more so for like we did way more plyometric where in indoor we were doing a lot more like squats, like trying to build our quads and like just get strong because we are jumping on hardwood. Where in beach it was more like how do we make them as quick as possible. They don't necessarily have to jump as high, but it's like how can we get them moving quicker in the sand?
So
Um,
is it more of a lateral quickness
um, it's a quickness everywhere, really.
everywhere?
Yeah. Yeah, like learning how to um yeah, just really keep the ball up. And so like that was also different for me because like indoor it's all about technique and having like the perfect platform, making sure your form was perfect with like everything. Where in beach, these girls are like hitting the ball with their elbows or like
Yeah.
poking it with their hands.
Yeah.
And so it's way more about
You're diving
athletic.
all over the place.
Right, it's way more about athleticism than indoor you could be really good and maybe not be as athletic because you have better technique, where beach volleyball you have to be athletic to be able to have the quickness and like the instincts to
Yeah.
get things up really. So
And there's a
um
lot more girls on the court in the indoor to
yeah, a
help
lot
out,
more help. A lot
right?
more help.
So how about this thought? Was there anything that surprised you emotionally that you weren't expecting when your playing days ended?
Mm. I was not expecting to feel lonely. during my transition out of sport. Because I had such a great group of friends outside of my teammates, and I had really amazing friends that were teammates. And so when I transitioned on, a lot of my close friends were still on the team, and that almost like made it harder because they were always gone. They were always doing team activities together. I got to see all the new gear they got, like all the cool new things
Yeah.
they got to do that we didn't get to do, my previous year. While like my friends that were just normal students or normal individuals, um, kind of already either went through that transition or weren't student athletes, and so they had real jobs and busy with their lives, and so I was still in grad school, and I was just feeling deeply, deeply lonely because I'm missing my 25 best girlfriends that were with me every single day. And it was really a spooky feeling for me because I was so used to having to be somewhere, and if you weren't somewhere, then there was going to be accountability. Like there's going to be people calling and making sure you got somewhere. Um, and I remember like being really, really anxious one day because I wasn't feeling good, and thinking to myself, like, if I don't like wake up or if I pass out and something happens to me, like no one is expecting me for a few days. And so like no one would know if something happened because I lived
Yeah.
by myself at the time. And that is like I got into a depression after I was done with athletics because not only like was I feeling lonely in that way, but there's a lot of other things like happening within the transition of like who am I? What do I do now with
Yeah.
all my free time? But loneliness, I would say, is probably the feeling I was not expecting at all. Like I thought I was just gonna miss the game. That was about
Yeah.
it.
And you said it before a couple times, the normal students,
Yes.
right? And college athletes are not normal.
No.
The pain and suffering that they sign up for,
Hmm.
not just for a week or a camp or for a semester, it's for years,
Hmm.
and the toll it takes on you, forget the physical side, the mental side, like you said, it's like you're worried about just nobody being around if something goes wrong because you're just so used to people being around,
Hmm.
but the normal student, they don't understand that. They don't
Hmm.
understand the work
Hmm.
that it takes,
Hmm.
So my
Or the like lack of options to like
be
y
normal.
be normal, or like if you don't want to do something on at practice or like go to weights, or like you don't
Yeah.
have that option. Like you have to do it
Yeah.
when you're tired, when you're,
Like it or not.
yeah, like it or not. And like that is a type of work ethic and dedication that is normal to student athletes that when I got outside in the real world with people who have never been in athletics, was sometimes a little frustrating for me because I'm like, you just have to do it. Like you were told to do this, you just
Yeah.
have to do it. It's almost
Yeah.
militaristic in a
Yeah.
way, you know?
Yeah.
And so I've learned how to give myself a lot more grace and rest. And now if I don't want to do a
It's
certain
hard.
workout, yes, I'm like, it's gonna be okay. I'm not gonna
Oh
get in
yeah.
trouble, you know?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like I was getting up this morning. I'm like, man, I don't want to go to the gym this morning. I'm like, go. You have to go.
Yeah,
If you don't go, you can't. I'm like
yeah,
yelling at myself.
yes, yeah.
We're just so used to that routine. But how
Hmm.
about this? So you've been out of sports for how many years now?
Um, uh, 26 years,
So
7 years.
not that long. Are you having nightmares yet about being late to practice or games
That
or anything?
that hasn't gone away. I'll have them every once in a while, probably about once a year now.
That's it.
Yeah, yeah.
I have them like every week.
Oh my gosh.
I have dreams, nightmares.
It's
Because because
nightmare.
because back when I was in my prehistoric playing days, if you were late, it was massive penalties,
Hmm.
massive physical punishment.
Hmm.
And not that they were beating you, but they made you run and they made you run and they made you run.
Beating would be, yeah.
I'd rather be punched,
Right,
right?
right.
Because it's short and quick, you
Yeah.
know. But I have dreams about I go to my locker, it's empty. I have dreams that I show up to practice and I'm late and there's nobody there. I have
Hmm.
dreams that I go to a team meeting and I missed it
Hmm. Hmm.
40 something years ago.
Yeah.
And I still have it's post-traumatic stress,
Yeah.
and I wake up probably a couple of times a night looking at the clock. What time is it?
hmm
What
hmm
time is it? Is it? Oh, I don't want to oversleep. I
Yes.
never even use the alarm. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
It's real.
Yeah. So what kind of now that you're in the other side
hmm
where you're working with athletes on all their mental conditioning,
hmm
right? What are the common struggles you see today?
Yeah. A lot of these student athletes are juggling so much more than when we were student athletes.
Because the
Um,
whole world is watching on their phones, right? Computers.
yes, yeah, they are super anxious. They're super burnt out. They're depressed, but functioning depressed because,
Mm.
again, they have no
Can you
option but to
talk
show up.
about that a little bit? Functioning depressed. Like, how do you see that? Do
hmm
they do they admit that, or do you just kind of
hmm
diagnose it by talking to them?
Yeah, I mean, being a functional depressed person is still showing up like to things where a lot of times depression can look like where it's hard to get out of bed. They don't show up to social events, they don't show up to things where a lot of these folks are having the same symptoms of depression and same severity of depression, but they still are at practice and they're still traveling and being around the team.
Yeah.
So it looks, I think like mental health often looks a lot different in athletes because um, of the structure that is like held here. But yeah, they're anxious, like they're running businesses on the side because of NIL. They're getting threatened in their Instagram comments, TikTok comments
Oh
because
yeah.
people are betting on them and
Oof.
they're not, making the stats that the person who betted on them wanted.
Wow, I never
Um,
even thought of that.
oh yeah,
Wow.
the online harassment has increased since sports betting became legal in a lot of states. And a lot of them are coming from very hard home life
Yeah.
that they're now transitioning to a lot of freedom, so struggling with that, which is pretty normal, I would say, for even non-student athletes, but they have the pressure where they have to meet all these demands, practice 40 hours a week on top of going to school, on top of being social, on top of sleeping and doing their homework and being a normal human and hanging out with
Homework.
friends.
Homework. It's like again going back to the normal student.
hmm
Right? People they don't. These kids still have to go do homework.
hmm
And when are they supposed to squeeze that in?
Exactly. In between team meetings and
Yeah.
weights and
Yeah.
traveling to and
Yeah.
from. Yeah. Yeah.
Now how about body language? Can you see it in their body language, the way they carry themselves, where they walk? When hey, there's something wrong with that guy or that girl, they're just not moving right.
That's a really good question. I mean, I think it depends. A lot of times, like you can see, like if their affect, like their mood is low, you can see it. But I think a lot of athletes actually are so good at hiding it because they know how to perform. They
Yeah,
know how to turn it on,
yeah,
and they're not going to let people know that they're struggling because if they're struggling, they're weak, and they can't be weak in front of their coaches or teammates or
yeah.
friends. They have to put on a performance. And so honestly, most of my work as a case manager is trying to normalize seeking help and trying to meet them where they are because a lot of them are afraid to come and meet with me because they don't want their coach knowing. They
Yeah.
don't want teammates seeing them walk in my office.
Isn't
Um,
that crazy?
Still to this day, yeah. But that's how strong the stigma is still. Which I'm in this field, so I'm like so normalized to mental health and talking about it, where
Yeah,
a lot of people, are kind of scared if I'm like talking to them and
yeah.
they're like, not sure what that means. And so a lot of
It,
my work is sitting with them and just like explaining what it actually means and
that it's
what
okay.
yeah, and what
Yeah,
therapy looks like and what
yeah,
getting on medication means. And that I would say that's majority of my work when I'm working with them and they're meeting with me because they only meet with me when it's an absolute crisis. Rarely
right.
do I get students coming in and being like, I just want to make sure I stay good the rest of the
Yeah, stay
season.
sharp.
Yeah, stay sharp. And I'm like, oh my gosh, so great. Let's do it.
Yeah,
And they end up staying sharp the rest of the season where
yeah,
a lot of folks wait until it's the crisis and then
Yeah.
we're working from, way below than their normal threshold. So
Right. Now, do the Michael Phelps commercials help?
I don't know. I love seeing them though. I'm
Yeah.
glad that those commercials help, but
Oh,
I I think it's also like dependent on their culture too. Like in Black culture, like mental health isn't talked about. In Asian culture, you don't talk about your issues. You don't bring inside stuff to outside people. And so it's cultural
well, the
as well.
Italian culture too. They say they don't believe in counseling, right? I'm,
Yes,
I'm not doing that,
exactly.
right?
I'm Mexican. They're just say pray to God. That's what they
Yeah.
say. So
Whatever
it,
works, right?
whatever the culture comes from,
Oh
like that's
God.
also a piece of it. And like if we're dealing with men, like the machismo that's in male athletes is like so strong. So it's just like
Yeah.
we're battling a lot more than just the individual. We're battling
Yeah.
like years and years of systemic oppression and beliefs
Oh yeah.
that, I'm sitting in front of an individual and that all has impacted them and their ability to ask for help.
It's crazy how that is, isn't it?
Hmm.
Now, from where you're sitting in your work, are there any type of like say early signs, if that's the right way to ask the question, of athletes who are over identifying as an athlete? Hey,
Mm.
like that's their entire worth and nothing else is left.
Yes, I have a few of them. Um, they are the ones that have really, really big goals. They are hyper fixating on sport. That's all they want to talk about. That's all they think about. They don't have any outside hobbies or any outside interests
They're
besides sport.
obsessed.
They're obsessed, which like, I watched a Michael Jordan documentary and there's a lot of things that maybe isn't popular opinion, but I thought that we often glorify in him that I think is not necessarily like good for like human nature. And one of them was being he was so obsessed that he was willing to tear down like other people and like his teammates. Or, he was creating this imaginary belief or like beef between other players in his head,
Yeah.
which is a strategy, but like at what point in like is being competitive, there's a line to like we're human at the end of the day. And so like there Michael Jordan was also obsessed with basketball and did anything he could to become the greatest, and he is the greatest still to this day. But I mean, I loved watching that as, a mental health therapist because there was a lot
I can
to
only imagine the things that you
analyze.
point out and see, like, man, that I wouldn't see,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
One of them being the way the world glorifies him playing when he had the flu. And I'm like, why are we normalizing and like glorifying people playing past what is healthy for them? Because like I remember a story my coach used to tell us of um like they all got in a huddle and the coach was like, who's the hardest working person in this room? Because no one's working as hard as them. And they all point to a girl and she actually passes out because she was like working like way too
Wow.
hard.
Yeah.
And that story was told as if like that's something we should work towards and strive towards. We should strive towards injuring ourselves and like
Yeah.
running through a brick wall for a coach, and playing, the gymnast that landed on one foot in the
Yeah.
Olympics because she broke her foot.
Mary Lou Retton.
Yes, and what I see as a human and a therapist is how um how she's ignoring her body and willing to really, really harm her body in order to perform. And we now know because like of the Larry Nassar case that like she was like pretty scared not to do that vault event or whatever, even though she was in pain. And so, I don't even know how we got on this tangent, but I'm always like telling my athletes like you have to listen to your body. I don't
Yeah.
care what your coaches or even doctors or trainers are telling
Yeah.
you. If you feel like something's wrong, like sport is never worth it because like I know so many of my athletes who for years like down the line can't lift their arm all the way up, and they're not going to be able to lift their kids up or lift their
Yeah.
animals up if they
Yeah.
want to. And it's like you have to think about the sacrifice and is it worth the long-term run? And a lot of times our athletes are so hyper focused on performing and wanting to, please their coaches,
Yeah.
and they're willing to sacrifice their health and like
Yeah.
well-being. And yeah, so that's something like I'm constantly thinking about and like reminding my student athletes when they're wanting to push past their injuries,
The limits.
their limits.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. It's not
Well, then
healthy.
they get hit with the question, well, are you hurt or are you injured?
Yeah, that yes, I hear that too
Right?
many times.
And,
Yeah.
and sometimes the kids are like, well, like, what's the difference? Like,
Yeah.
what if you really understand the difference, which means unless you're going to really hurt yourself,
Mm-hmm.
you better get your butt out there and play, is
Mm-hmm.
what the coach is saying.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And that, there are scenarios where there are kids that come on, really,
Mm-hmm.
you can't get
Mm-hmm.
past this. But then there are kids that shouldn't be out there,
Yeah.
and because of the pressure, they're out there.
Yeah.
It just makes it worse.
Yeah. I mean, I think Tua, the quarterback, should be completely done with football because of his concussions. But, it's his life, and we have enough research on CTE to know what may be bound to happen.
Yeah,
But that's like a perfect example of just like how strong the athletic identity is and how strong also like the love of the game is that we're willing to put
yeah.
our bodies through this.
And I talk about this to a lot of athletes too. It's because the love of the game becomes a drug. The euphoric state that you feel when you're in the
Hmm.
zone, in the flow, out
Hmm.
there playing, and
Hmm.
you almost forget the game
Yes.
because people say, "Do you remember this? I did that."
Yeah.
It's like guys who hit home runs in baseball. Half of them about running around the bases.
Yeah.
So that's a drug
It
that
is.
people want to keep getting back,
Hmm.
and they'll give anything to get it
Hmm.
because one, they feel good when they're in it, and everybody around them makes them feel better.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's crazy.
And Jeb, have you experienced any activity or anything that made you feel as in the flow or like I miss the competitive juices of like
Yeah.
winning a game. I have yet to find something. I've been searching through so many hobbies and activities that makes me feel as hungry and excited and in the flow as volleyball did. Like, have you found something that makes you feel like that?
No,
I don't think it can be replicated. And
that's what I
so,
mean. It's like being on crack.
yes,
You know,
yeah.
it's like you can't figure it out, but you try to find it. So like if like I don't know anything about your profession at all, other than it's incredible. I would guess that helping and impacting other athletes in their lives and watching them succeed through the other side
Hmm.
must come close
Mm.
for
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
You
absolutely.
know, you know,
Absolutely.
and for me, I'm in the financial world during the day. I like to say I'm Clark Kent during the day and Superman at night when I do this, right? But we deal with some serious stuff
Hmm.
on the risk management side.
Hmm.
And I've delivered millions of dollars worth of death claims,
Mm. Yeah,
millions of dollars worth of disability claims.
yeah.
That when you're handing that to somebody, when they're in their darkest moment, you feel like Superman,
Hmm. Hmm.
And so that's as close as I get, but it's still not the same as the
Yeah,
flow.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So hanging up the jersey, let's talk about that. What is it? What was the inspiration behind it?
Hmm.
And how is that going?
Yeah, hanging up the jersey started. I became really, really interested in life after sport actually when I was in college, because I met an Olympian who was training with me during the summer, and she got cut 2 weeks before they went to Rio. And I was like so shocked. I'm like, so it just ends like that, even at the highest level, like they just cut you off like that. And so I am like, okay, let me see what like research says. And so I put all my studies, all my research papers, all my experiments were towards life after sport. And so I started developing like workshops to help other athletes prepare for life after sport. And then when I got into my role here at Long Beach, I was able to create a workshop for our senior student athletes, which then that transitioned into an actual class. And so they get course credit. Our senior student athletes are all in one class together, their fall semester of their
And you're
senior
the
year.
professor.
I'm one of like five of the professors because I coordinate with other amazing staff here in
That's great.
athletics. But they kind of during that time, I was making these workshops, and one of my seniors was like, Kaylin, you need to make like a podcast. And I was just like, you know what? During the summer, I was like, I got a little time. Let me learn how to make a podcast. And I started interviewing former athletes so they can share their story with the
Yeah,
whole goal of like, when I can share my story and others hear it, people feel less alone because there's going to be
exactly.
thousands every year going through this
Yeah.
transition.
And they all think they're sitting in their dorm room and it's only them,
Yes, they
right?
think it's only them that
Yeah.
experience this
Yeah.
specific way
Right.
out. In each episode, I just like learn so much more because I'm hearing all these different stories. And so I just started writing down kind of everything and then coming up with activities that I think would complement like the areas of struggle. And one of my staff members, when we were prepping to turn the workshop into a course, kind of knew I was doing that. She's like, well, Caitlin's writing a book, so we can use that for the curriculum. And I'm like, I'm writing a book. And so I wrote the book. I spent like a year writing it and we got it published.
How hard was that? Was that like a ton of like thinking and oh my, what do I do next behind it, or did it just flow like nothing?
It somewhat like was a flow. I feel like the hardest part was I wasn't an English major. I'm not a writer. And so it was like not knowing what I was doing and like I didn't know how to write a book. I didn't even know where to start. And so I just kind of like formulated the chapters somehow and like made it make sense in my head. And then the publishing company kind of helped a little bit. But I like for me that was like one of my most like proud moments because I feel like in athletics I made it really far, but I was an athlete my whole life. And so I was entering like a new world of like writing a book and like becoming an author, even though like I didn't even know I wanted to do it. And I started from zero, like not knowing anyone that did it, not knowing how to do it, and I like had to learn so much. I did it
Yeah.
all, on my own, but like through asking and helping, like asking for help from people who've done it before, just strangers that were willing to, offer me advice. And so like that process just really challenged me because I'm like, I don't know if I'm making the right decision. I don't know if this is right. I don't really know, but I'm gonna do it. And if it fails, I still did it.
Yeah.
But to me, it didn't feel like I could fail from it because it was like something that I felt like from my heart would help people. Like failure would for me like would be not writing it, even though I have all this information
Yeah.
and idea of how to gather it. And so, yeah, so I created a workbook that goes over the emotional, physical, financial, the social changes, all that happen in their transition. And each chapter has an activity to help them either start thinking, if they're a current athlete, start reflecting and thinking about what can I do now to make my
Yeah.
transition easier? Or for former athletes, just like what can I like start tapping into now to like help me through this struggle? So it's pretty flexible, and our student athletes have really loved working with it. And when I teach workshops or seminars with other universities, we just had credible feedback because it's super engaging conversation usually, and I get them the workbook, and like when I do the workshop, my whole goal is to get them excited about
Yeah.
the transition because most of them are scared, nervous, or some of them are ready. But either
Yeah.
way, we're getting them excited that like there's so much more to your life and world. And like this isn't going to be the greatest part of your life. Like you're
Yeah.
going to have so much greater experiences once you're, free and can like do things and your body feels better because it's not overworked and overtrained.
Beat
So
up.
yeah, so um we've just had really great feedback from like our courses and the workshops I've done with other universities on
So
um
multiple schools now use your workbook?
yes, yeah.
That's
So
wow.
that's kind of like my goal with hanging up the jersey is like letting that be a resource because I mean we have a class for it, but not every school has the capacity. They're a little bit more limited in resources, but they could still hand out the book and do either like a small workshop.
Yeah.
I went to Loyola Marymount, LMU, up in LA and did a workshop with some of their students, and that was like phenomenal. And they were able to get the book and like use the book while we're like chatting and processing and
Yeah.
just starting conversation because that's really what is needed for these current student athletes.
I mean, talk about the flow. Talk about the euphoric state. I can, how good does that make you feel knowing that one, your employer
Hmm.
decides to make a curriculum around you and use your book, and
Yeah.
now other colleges, universities are doing it too. Like
Yeah.
that's got to come pretty close.
Yeah, I mean, it's taken a lot for me to appreciate it in that way because it's always been in my head and I've always thought it was important. But seeing the difference that it's making firsthand has allowed me to reach that flow state because I think before when I wasn't touching as many student athletes, it felt like, oh, like I don't know if this information like people care about. And so I didn't really hit the flow because I was second guessing if like the information was important or
Yeah.
like why me kind of like why would I be the one to do this stuff and like why would people
Why
take me
not?
seriously? Exactly, why not? And so I've definitely like I think since the release of the book and seeing the responses from folks has allowed me to actually enjoy it and enter the flow state.
So how many student athletes do you think you've touched? If you had to guess.
Um, this is
between
the,
your job during the day, let's say for lack of better words, you're teaching the class, you're working with other schools, people that
yeah.
have bought the book, like how if you had to put a number to it, if you had to guess, what do you think it might be?
Um, Probably close to like the first year of this book being out, probably close to 1,000 so far.
That's
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah. So yeah, I forget that. I really like that question. Thank you for asking that.
Just think about that for a second. Now, here's where it gets even better is that ripple effect.
Mm-hmm.
Well, who are they talking to about the book?
Mm-hmm.
Who are
Mm-hmm.
they talking to about your whatever with the skill sets you get them to learn and
Yeah.
follow?
Yeah.
Think about that. Now, have you worked with any coaches?
No, not yet. Not really. Yeah.
Here we go.
Yeah.
That's where that's going to go. Can you
Mm-hmm.
imagine that if the coaches got involved and got behind that mission?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's the ADs, the assistant ADs.
Mm-hmm.
Get
Mm-hmm.
them involved. The SAC
Yeah.
programs,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, let's go. We're going to start a campaign.
Yes.
Well, you're a young woman. You've impacted, like you said, over 1,000 student athletes so far, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just beginning,
Mm-hmm.
right? God knows where it's going to go. But there's going to come a day, and I ask this to everybody on the show. There's going to come a day where you're a legacy, where you're just a memory.
Mm-hmm.
And when that day comes and your name pops up, how do you want to be remembered by the
Mm-hmm.
people whose lives you've touched and changed?
Mm. I hope that my legacy is, um, Caitlin was someone that I felt seen by and felt like saw me as a human and treated me as if I was someone special and unique. And felt the like I was important. That's what I want people to walk away with.
Mm, it's pretty special way to end it,
Hmm.
you know? And I have no doubt that you're already doing that,
Thank you,
and,
Jeff.
and people are already saying that about you. When you walk out of the classroom, walk out of the office, they're probably saying, wow, she was so helpful,
Hmm.
you know?
Hmm.
Well, Caitlin, we covered a lot. We talked about coming out of high school, We talked about college. We talked about transferring. We talked about coming out of college. We talked about your job, everything you're
Hmm.
doing, your podcast, the workbook. Is there anything we haven't touched you think we should hit before we wrap it up?
No, I do have a question for you though.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. Um, you said 133
Yep.
episodes?
Yes.
This is the 133rd episode. What have you learned from interviewing and hearing 133 stories that you kind of take away from being a host?
Oh my God. What have I learned? That's a great question. What have I learned is one is that everybody's story, no matter how small or large, needs to be heard
Hmm.
because even that small little story can make a huge difference in somebody else's life that could change their lives forever.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I've heard crazy stories. I mean, all good, but I've heard stories about people who have very difficult starts.
Hmm.
I have overcome and jumped through so many hoops and hurdles
Hmm.
and have come out the other side to just win the game of life.
Hmm.
And almost every single one of these people was helped by somebody else along the
Mm.
way.
Yeah.
So, what I've learned from all these episodes is that I need to keep helping others as well by
Hmm.
sharing stories like yours
Hmm.
with people so they can hear what influence you have and the impacts you've made. And if your story can change one person's life,
Hmm.
then we've all learned something,
That's exactly right.
you know?
Hmm.
So it's a good question. Yeah.
Yes.
Hopefully that was
Yeah.
a good answer.
I
Yeah.
think so.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
Caitlin, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate your time. And if there's anything that I can do to help you and your growth and the impact you're making, please don't hesitate. And I just can't wait to see the next level of you and where that ends up. And maybe there's book number two.
Yes, maybe in the
Yeah.
future.
That's it. So, as I always end the show, stay strong.
Stay strong.